Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first of many dungeon guides for Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn with myself, Meoni. So let's kick it off with the first dungeon you'll be encountering, the first of which is Satasha, a level 15 dungeon. This dungeon goes from level 15 to level 18. Players above level 18 will be scaled down to level 18 for this particular dungeon in the Duty Finder. This is only accessible to players of level 15 who are on the story quest Must Be Pirates, which is part of the main storyline. The run should take roughly around 20 to 30 minutes depending on your group, and is a 4-man instance. Satasha is located in western Lenossi and can be accessed from the Aleport ferry. Be sure to attune yourself with the Aetheryte on the way to Satasha to make grouping easier in the future, outside of the Duty Finder. This particular dungeon has 3 bosses, and indeed the layout of the dungeon should not be unfamiliar to anybody who has played an MMO before. The feel of this particular dungeon is that of a low-level, generic, very simple layout, which indeed you would be hard-pressed to fail to follow. There are some extra rooms off the sides, which I will not be going in, majority of those, only showing some of them, which do contain loot chests which have a chance of dropping extra loot of, random loot that you can acquire in the game. So be sure to check those out if you are after them. If not, then we will show you the direct route. Of course, I'm going to speed up a lot of these pulls and a lot of the dungeon until we get to the majority of the bosses, simply for time-based stuff, and indeed because the trash is fairly self-explanatory. The majority of the trash indeed is in packs of 3 to 4 mobs and is no greater than that. There are some patrolling mobs to look out for, but the majority of those are particularly low level and not elite, so you can easily tank and AoE them down quite easily. So let's skip on to the first boss now, which is a Coil, like leopard thing, which you may be familiar with if you've ever played a Final Fantasy game before. Now, if you noticed in a previous room, I sort of majorly skipped over it, there's a particular memo that you loot on the ground, which gives you a hint if you read it, as to which colour you must choose. Now, which colour you must choose, I'm talking about these particular coral formations. Now, these all have activations once you click on them. Only 2 of these coral switches will poison you, and 1 will spawn a boss, which you must kill to open the door behind it. So it is random, and it can be any single one of these, but the memo itself does give you the clue, but the poison is indeed obviously low damage and can be dispelled with sooner, so it's no real problem anyway. But the first boss once summoned is Chopper, a Coil or leopard type thing with long whiskers, which you may remember from Final Fantasy. Well, pretty much every Final Fantasy I can remember actually had these in it. I'm not sure how you pronounce that even. But Chopper is a Coil, and he is fairly tank and spank. There's no real strategy to this boss. It is literally a tank and spank elite mob that has a boss symbol next to it. So this shouldn't pose any problems. So it's a good way of practicing your tank healing and indeed your DPS. He does a few lunges here and there, but nothing you can't heal through, and indeed isn't really punishing, even if you do get hit by it. So, once you've dealt with that funky oversized kitty cat and got your shiny new weapons, it's time to move on to the next few trash packs. There's not much trash before the next inverted commas boss, but they are indeed quite annoying. There is some patrol mobs here that you need to pay attention to. Overpulling can indeed obviously cause a few issues with mana being low on your healer, which you might want to avoid. But moving on swiftly past all of this trash, you come to the next room, which is a familiar boss room. As you can tell with this purple line, indicates that there will be a boss coming up in the next place, and indeed this is a boss, inverted commas. I'm doing that deliberately because this is not a boss that you kill in this particular room. This is Captain Madison, who is a particular NPC who you will see throughout the rest of this dungeon, who, if you remember Millhouse Manostorm from World of Warcraft, if you've played that game, from I can't remember what dungeon it is. It's a dungeon in Deep Home, but essentially you fight her, you get her to a certain low HP, and then she runs off further into the dungeon, and that's classed as the boss fight over, and you get some free loot. She doesn't really pose much of a threat herself either, to be honest. It's more of her ads. It's a real ad fight, so new ads will spawn from the left side of the area that you fight her in. and you will need to take those down. But this shouldn't pose any threat, like I say, and because these things are quite low level and don't really do any damage, you should have zero problems. So once you've dealt with that and Captain Madison has ran off, you need to move on to the next room full of trash. The pattern here is quite repetitive, but indeed this is a low level dungeon, so what more do you expect? Now this next room is all about getting keys. There are basically these little hut or houses on this raised wooden platform full of NPCs that you want to pull in, obviously groups of 3 or 4, slow pulls, and make sure you don't over pull because they're very close together. So do ranged pulls or lost pulls or whatever you deem is best for the party. But indeed, once you have pulled these, your idea is to kill them until it drops the captain's quarters key. You then use this key on the captain's quarters door, which should be to the west of your current location, and inside there you will have to fight a large mob who is just a normal elite. He isn't a boss. Once you have defeated him, he will drop the key, which will take you to the door to the north. Once you have opened this door, you can head on down to the next encounter with Captain Madison. But indeed, obviously there are other rooms in the primary room with all these NPCs, all these mobs rather, which you can go in, which all contain or have a chance to contain treasure coffers with random loot inside. So that may be in your best interest if you're after experience and loot. It's probably wise to go and clear all of those rooms as well. Indeed, the group size is, the mob size is always 3 to 4 mobs, and there might be some patrolling mobs. Not all of them are elite though, so you shouldn't have too many issues. So in the next room you'll be fighting Captain Madison for the second and final time in the instance. Thank goodness for that. She comes with 2 ads, these Reavers, which want to be focused down before you go on the boss, as once she reaches 25% health she will call Scurvy Dogs via that particular ability, which will summon a load of dogs from the western side of this particular room. So indeed you can get quite easily overwhelmed if you don't kill the ads before her. Follow the ads and then boss, and you will have her down with no problem. So moving on to the next room. This next room is full of trash, lots of trash in here. Just carve your way towards the end here and you'll come to this platform here which has these unnatural ripples, and there are 4 of these unnatural ripples surrounding the next and indeed the final boss of Satasha, Den the Orca-toothed, who is a Sahagin leader, a fishman basically. And indeed, this is a fairly basic fight, but these unnatural ripples can be deactivated, otherwise they will spawn these baleen guards, these fishmen, which will be called upon during the actual fight. These don't pose any threat, and to be perfectly honest, I would simply not deactivate the ripples and just focus on Den the Orca-toothed. He has a nasty cleave, so you want to stay away from the front of the boss, but apart from that he is fairly tank and spank. It's just introducing you to the basic ad fight, and indeed the sort of idea that there are fights in the future of Final Fantasy XIV Realm Reborn that require you to interact with your environment, as well as focus on handling ads and indeed a main boss. Use your limit break if you have it on the boss DPS wise. Apart from that, healing is fairly simple and tanking is as simple as tanking all of the ads. However, the ads don't do much damage, so you can easily kite them if you want to just focus on the boss, but honestly it will be dead before the ads become an issue anyway, so just focus everybody on that. So that is Satasha. Once you've got your loot, you have finished your first dungeon, and indeed you'll hopefully have dinged by then and gained level 16. Hopefully this video has been of some use. Indeed, the next video will be coming up straight after this one for the next dungeon, the Tamtara Deepcroft. My name has been Meoni of AceGamesTV, and I'll see you next time.